Hi, Mom. How you doing?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Good. Should I give a little intro?
You'll have to speak louder. I couldn't tell what you said.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little introduction.
Good.
So, we're gonna do a bunch of videos of the Bernie and Louise Knapp family history. You're Louise Knapp, and how many kids do you have?
9. And are you going to say the date?
You can do that.
Today is April 19, is it?
Yeah.
2020.
And we're quarantined because of the coronavirus.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead. Tell us what you want to tell us about, and then I'll listen and see if I have any
Okay.
questions.
Okay. Um, Bernie, that's Tim's dad, my husband, was born and raised in Idaho. He was born in Goshen, Idaho. That's a little ways out of Idaho Falls. He was raised in Idaho Falls, and quite a bit of time he spent growing up in Island Park, where his brother-in-law Barney South had a sawmill. Barney married Marge, Bernie's sister. Um, Bernie attended school in Idaho Falls. He attended college at Rick's College in Rexburg. It's now BYU, Idaho. He attended school at Utah State University in Logan and some at BYU in Provo. He was drafted into the Army during the Korean conflict, but he served in Germany. And then he served a mission, the Southern Far East Mission, with headquarters in Hong Kong, but he served in the Taiwan zone. And I think that when he was called, Elder served 3 years, and while he was out on his mission, they changed it to 2 years, but he was allowed to be there 2.5 years. And he was released and came home. I was called on a mission to the same place in 1962, and I served till 1964. But when I got there, Bernie had already been released and gone home. After I returned home in 1964, I was visiting my parents in Lava Hot Springs, Idaho for the Christmas break. I'd been teaching school in Salt Lake City, Utah. I taught sewing at Lincoln Junior High as soon as I got home from my mission. And so Christmas vacation in 1964, when I was home for Christmas holiday, I had a Chinese friend of mine with me that I had met in the mission field, and she and I went to Pocatello to pick up my sister Edith, who worked at Deseret Industries. My friend's name was Maisie Lee. She and I were in the store waiting for Edith to get off work, and I looked across the store, and there was a man wearing a cowboy hat. And I said to myself, well, I could go for a guy like that. And lo and behold, he walked over to us, and in Chinese, he said, Merry Christmas. And I was dumbfounded. And then he just walked away. And then, so I said to Maisie, go ask him why he knows how to speak Chinese. So she did. And he said that he had served a mission in Taiwan. And then that was, we didn't see him anymore then. Well, after Christmas break, we went back to Utah. Maisie moved into his ward, and he saw her and he talked to her, and she wrote me a postcard and said, because I was in Salt Lake and she was in Provo, and she said, "You better come down and visit me this weekend. Elder Knapp talked to me." So the next weekend I went down, and he invited, and I saw him at church. She and I went to church and saw him there, and he invited us to go for a ride with him. And we rode to Heber City to visit one of the sisters that had served in Taiwan when Bernie was there. And that's how we got acquainted, and we dated, and we married in July 22nd, 1965, in the Idaho Falls Temple. Bernie was teaching driver's education for what is now Utah Valley University. Then it was a trade school. It had several names over the years. I think it was probably Utah Trade Tech then. He was teaching driver ed for them, but they offered driver ed training for Provo High School students, and then others, adults, could come and so on. And he had just purchased almost 6 acres of property in the Provo River bottoms, north of main town of Provo. So he had the summer off, and we honeymooned in Idaho. His sister Marge still had the sawmill in the Island Park area, and they had cabins. She had a fairly big, nice new cabin. There were other cabins around that different family members had lived in while Bernie was a young man. So we honeymooned up there. We got married on the 22nd and went to Island Park that night and the next, and then we had our wedding reception in Lava Hot Springs on the 24th of July, and then we went back to Island Park, and so that was Saturday night. And then Monday morning, Bernie had invited several of my family members to come and tour Yellowstone Park with us and stay at the cabins in Island Park. So my parents and my brother Jim came and met us there. My brother Ken and his girlfriend Nida Lewis, that grew up with us in Marion, came. Irma and Keith and some of their children came. Linda, John and Margie's girl Linda, came. And my father thought that Bernie Knapp was one of the most wonderful men on earth that would invite his wife's family on his honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
After we honeymooned, we came back to Provo, to the place that Bernie had purchased. It had a house, a farmhouse, a shop. I think it probably originally had been a granary, but then it was made into a shop. And another outbuilding, I suppose you'd call it a shed. It wasn't a big barn. And had a stream running through it, had some cherry trees, had a big pear orchard. And Bernie already owned some registered Morgan horses that he had there on the, well, he had them boarded out with someone else, but when we got back then he had them there on our place, and it was a wonderful place. Right now, Will Will's Pit Stop is close to where our place was then. There wasn't a Will's Pit Stop then. In fact, University Avenue did not go straight through from Provo to Provo Canyon like it does now. It ended about where, well, I was going to say Provo High, but Provo High's not there anymore. Just west of BYU, that's about where it ended. And to get to Provo Canyon, you went on Canyon Road. And then there was just a little road that wound through the river bottoms. And they extended University Avenue straight through after we were married.
Nice. I have a couple questions. So, when Dad came over to you at DI and spoke to you in Chinese, was it directed at you and Maisie, or just Maisie? Were you and Maisie speaking Chinese to each other already that he would know that you spoke Chinese?
He spoke to both of us, and the reason he 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 later said that he had seen me at a Chinese club party, and I suppose he'd seen Maisie there too. So he knew about us. We did not know about him.
Okay. And one more question. You said that Maisie sent you a postcard. Why didn't she just send you a text?
That's such a good question. At that time in history, we did not have cell phones, and a telephone call between Salt Lake and Provo was long distance and fairly expensive, so much so that people seldom made long distance phone calls. And so probably cost 5 cents for a postcard. It was on one side you'd address it, and on the other side you'd write your message. Just to give you an idea about what it was like for phone calls then, just a few years before that, I went to BYU from 1957 to 1961, and in about 1958, my brother Harold, who was living in Provo and attending Utah Technical College, got engaged to his fiancée Laura, and my parents at that time lived 50 miles away in Marion, Utah. That's up in Camas Valley. And Harold told me that he was going to make a long distance phone call to tell our parents that he was engaged. And this is true. In my mind, I said to myself, well, I wonder if that news is important enough to be worthy of a long distance phone call. And I thought, well, I guess it is.
Nice. Cool, thanks. Well, I'm going to stop the recording. That can be our first session.